Hi everyone. It's been a while since I've done a video talking. So I can just imagine how many of you are just turning me off right now. But for those of you that have lasted the 5 seconds as soon as I said the word talking, um, welcome. Glad you're here. Um, so it's been a little while since I've done a video um, just talking about fun stuff. But I wanted to go and let you know about a new venture that I'm going to be doing. It's not going to, unfortunately, bring me any money, but it's something I'm going to be doing for fun. Um, so first off, I thought it'd be kind of cool to tell you all this story. So basically, um, the thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing Twitch streaming. And I'm going to be doing it for two of my very favorite video game series in the world. Um, that is Resident Evil and Tomb Raider. And some of you who know me know of my intense love for these series. I do also love Final Fantasy as well, but streaming Final Fantasy, like not 14, which is the online one, would take a long ass time. But who knows? In the future, I might also do Final Fantasy. Um, but um, I wanted to share kind of a cool story with you of why I love Resident Evil and Tomb Raider so much. Um, for those of you who are not initiated with what Tomb Raider or Resident Evil is, they're basically video game franchises that started out on the PlayStation 1 back in '96. And I was 12 at the time. I'm really old now. Um, and I, that year, wanted to get a Nintendo 64 really bad. I was really excited for it. And the reason why is I just loved Mario and I loved all of the Nintendo franchises so much, and I really wanted it really bad. And '96 Christmas around came, I didn't get one. Um, my grandmother died, unfortunately, in March of 1997. And I was a mess because my grandmother was so close to me, and my mom was, struggling trying to raise me as a single mom, and my grandma would help her out so much with other things, and so um, yeah, and my dad wasn't really around, but he was still in my life to a point. And that year I had a birthday party, and it was a birthday party that I'll never forget because my dad knew how much my grandmother meant to me, and he also knew how much I wanted a Nintendo 64. And so that year, based off of little hints my mom was dropping, I kind of had a hint I was going to be getting a Nintendo 64. I knew it was going to be coming. I was really excited for it. And then um, my dad kept talking to this one guy who worked at the nearby Sony plant. And he and this guy were really good friends. And they were just talking. And over time, the guy was like letting him know about the PlayStation, and my dad had actually had a chance to see a early model of the PlayStation and seeing what kind of cool stuff it could do. And that year, I went ahead up to my dad's house. He lived about an hour away from my mom, and we went up there, and he's like, "Okay, son, like, here's your birthday gift," and he gives me a box of this like tiny little box, and I open it up, or I tear it open, and I was sad because it didn't look like a Nintendo 64. I was a horrible child. And I open it up, and it's a box of Waffle Crisp, which was like my favorite cereal, and one of the like leading contributors to my obesity is probably Waffle Crisp. And I open up the box, and inside were these dirty socks. And I was like so sad because my dad was just laughing as I opened it up and I dumped them out. He's like, "That's it, son. That's all I could get you for your birthday." And I was so pissed. I was yelling and everything. And I dump it out, and there's this like little tiny paper in one of the socks. And I'm like looking through it, and it like says something about going to his back den bedroom area in the house that he lived in. And so I take that and I go in there, and there was another piece of paper hidden between two record albums, and I pulled that out, and he led me on like an hour and a half like scavenger hunt around the house that he had. And finally, what happened was that the last clue, it was a hint to the shed that was outside. And I went ahead and I took the clue, and I went out to the shed, and I looked up in the shed, and there was this like medium sized box that was like wrapped in a paper bag, and like you would have for like the old like book covers from school. And I remember taking it down, and it was not the size of a Nintendo 64. And I remember I was like, okay, what was all this about, you know? And I went ahead and I took it down, and we went back inside the house, and I opened it up, and it was a PlayStation. And he's like, "Happy birthday, son." And I was like, thinking in my head, "This is not what I fucking wanted." I was a horrible child. And, but I graciously said thank you. And my dad already knew. He's like, "I know this isn't really what you wanted, but my friend works at the Sony plant, and I've seen all these demos and videos, and this thing is going to like destroy the Nintendo 64. It is going to floor it." And my dad had a really good way of telling early on. He was a truck driver, but he was also an engineer. He was also kind of an engineer at heart. He was really good about like looking at something and like breaking it down and saying like, this is going to work or not. He was like really good at that. And he knew from the early on that the PlayStation was going to be so much more superior than the Nintendo 64. Um, and he's like, it was a lot of money, so just try it. If you don't like it, we can return it. And it came with a demo disc. And I was like, I really don't have any games, I can hold on to it. Maybe later on I can get some allowance or something. This is before I started working when I was 15. So this is like 3 years before I got my first job. And so I didn't really have any money. And my mom said, "Well, here's $5. We'll stop at Blockbuster and we'll pick up a game on the way home." And I was like, "Okay, great." So we drive over to Blockbuster, and we go in there, and there's all these PlayStation games, and they had a smaller catalog than all like the Super Nintendo at the time or the Nintendo. And I remember going over and looking at them, and none of them really like looked interesting to me except for one. And the one that had looked interesting to me was a guy on the front of it. He had a machine gun he was holding. He looked like he was like scared out of his mind, and it had this like kind of cool gray camouflagey background, and it was all like gritty and dark, and it's just like the look on his face was just so scary. And I remember like loving horror when I was a kid, and I still do actually. Like horror is one of my favorite like genres for everything. And we went ahead, and I was like, what about this one? And my mom looked at it, and my mom was one of those parents. She really didn't care about the like ratings. She didn't care whether it was teen or mature. Like you could have been like playing porn in your bedroom. She didn't fucking care. And she like looked at it. She's like, "This looks interesting." And both me and my mom, we had watched the X-Files a lot when I was a kid. And so she was like, "Oh, it's like the X-Files. Just like a man that you play as, and there's a woman, and you can kind of choose them." She's like, "I think this would be really cool, And we didn't really know it was about zombies because they really didn't allude to that well. And so we got it and we brought it up and we waited in line for a while. And the guy at the front like took the case that we had and he was on the phone talking with somebody and he grabbed something from the video game, kind of like they used to have these like drawers that would come out with games in them for you non-old people out there. And he just threw it in there and he scanned it and he's like, here you go, you know, it's $5. And so I went home and I thought that I had Resident Evil. I didn't even really even check what was in the bag. And then I get home and I set up my PlayStation and I'm all ready to play this creepy game that's at night. And I open it up and inside the case was not Resident Evil. It was Tomb Raider. And that is how I met Lara Croft, who's the heroine of the Tomb Raider franchise. And I remember I was feeling bummed because I, first off, didn't get the system that I was really wanting. But the second off, I didn't even get the game that I wanted. I was like kind of bummed about it. And then I remember being like, fuck it, you know, I only have 5 days with this thing. I might as well play it. And I remember putting it in the PlayStation and the game just blew my mind. It was so interactive, and the fact that it was like the first truly 3D game that I had ever played. I mean, just to see like video games come from a 2D thing to like a 3D thing was just like the coolest thing. And like hearing a character who actually talked was like, I mean, it truly felt like the future. It was like the future is here. And I remember I played that like nonstop for the 5 days that we owned it. And I was almost away from beating it. And I remember we had to return it. And I remember I saved up my allowance money. But the first game that I bought was not Resident Evil, it was actually Tomb Raider. I then went back and rented Resident Evil. And I remember really enjoying it. I remember it scared the shit out of me. And so I purchased that briefly after that, you know, I kept saving up money. And then, yeah, I played Resident Evil, and that was like the coolest experience. And it was so scary that I actually had to turn it off and come back to it like a few days after I had originally started. I think I got like partway through the mansion. I just couldn't take it and I turned it off, you know. But then I came back to it. But I actually think that probably Tomb Raider preempted me to enjoy Resident Evil because Tomb Raider is a little scary in its own right with the dark areas you travel in that are really quiet. In fact, I would probably venture that actually Tomb Raider in some respects is a little bit more scarier than Resident Evil, only because the areas that you travel in have no sound. The environments that surround you in the older titles were usually very dark. And Resident Evil always had like a soundtrack going typically. There was sound there, but it was, you like knew the area was alive basically. Where with Tomb Raider, there could be traveling through miles of just nothingness, and then all of a sudden there's a swarm of like, you know, mummified creatures trying to attack you. So both games were scary in their own right, but it's hard. They're just different types of scariness with those. But so yeah. So anyway, that's the story I wanted to share with you. But yeah. So basically, I'm doing this to let you all know that I'm doing well, and this is something fun that I'm going to be starting now that it's the 25th anniversary of both of these titles. And yeah, it's crazy how time flies. I'm 36 years old, and I have just seen a lot of shit. And Tomb Raider and Resident Evil have been right there alongside me through this crazy life that I've led. So yeah. So anyway, I will be posting my Twitch stream on Grommer, my Twitter, my Facebook, which some of you, I don't really give it out to everybody because of work and stuff. And then I'll also be seeing about trying to figure out a way to put it on YouTube. I know there's ways you can do it, but I'm going to look into it to see if it's even possible. I think it would be, as long as you have the key for it. So, but yeah, so I hope you enjoy this video. with said belly rubs. Weight wise, I'm doing good. About 483, 480 ish. So gained a little bit, but not too much, unfortunately. Yeah. So, but I'm happy here too. So it's all bonus weight from here on out. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you look forward to my streams and future content. Bye.